make move way.
In today's two-part episode, we are going to do some nutritional dialectics, learn some nutritional Pyrrhonism, go over some studies, figure out the things that all good diets have in common. We're going to practice epistemic humility, and we're going to learn to say yes to Vishnu, the upholder, and no to Shiva, the destroyer. Get ready to learn how to eat to prepare for your death. What's up, family? It's your boy Danny, fresh in the flesh, on YouTube's most criminally underrated channel, back with another episode reminding you once again that you are beautiful, capable, and strong, which means that you are good enough for whatever fate cooks up and sends your way. And you're going to stay that way because you are going to eat meat, move weight, and die like a boss. If this is your first time here and you want to learn how to make sense of your experience and how to Pareto optimize your life, well, stick around and find out. Rolling. Once upon a time, there was a sparrow that decided not to fly south for the winter. Soon enough, he started getting cold and changed his mind, and reluctantly started flying south. After a short time, ice began to form on his wings, and he froze up and fell toward the earth inside of a barn, almost frozen. A cow passing by took a shit on the little sparrow. The sparrow thought that this was the end, but then the manure warmed him up and started to thaw his wings. Warm, happy, and able to breathe, he started to sing. Just then, a large cat was walking by and hearing his singing went into the barn to investigate. And having uncovered the sparrow out of the shit and digging him out of the pile, he promptly devoured the sparrow. Now, it might seem that there are no lessons here, but in fact there are three. Number one, everyone who shits on you is not necessarily your enemy. Number two, everyone that gets you out of shit is not necessarily your friend. And number three, when you're warm and happy in a pile of shit, keep your mouth shut. Speaking of being eaten alive out of a pile of shit, according to one account given by Diogenes Laertius, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus was said to have been devoured by dogs after smearing himself in cow manure to cure himself of his dropsy. Let this serve as a reminder to you, a Memento Mori. Death comes to all men, sometimes in strange ways, but it always comes. Here's some more strange deaths for you to consider. Agathocles, a Greek tyrant from Syracuse, was murdered with a poisoned toothpick. Philetas of Kos was said to have studied arguments and considered erroneous word usage so carefully that he wasted away and starved to death while he was studying. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, died after ingesting several pills of mercury with the mistaken belief that it would grant him eternal life. It's ironic. Chrysippus, a 3rd century BC Greek Stoic, was said to have died laughing to death. He saw a donkey eating his figs, which caused him to start to giggle, and then he told his slave to give him, the donkey, some neat wine to wash the figs down with, whereupon he started laughing so hard that he died. Also ironic for a Stoic to go out that way. Sophocles choked to death on an unripe grape. Antiphanes died after being struck by a pear. Lots of death involving fruit here. Draco, an Athenian lawmaker, was allegedly smothered to death by a bunch of adoring crowds in a theater who were throwing their coats and hats and shit on him. And lest you think I don't need to know when I'm going to die or what day, just where, so I can avoid the place, according to Valerius Maximus Aeschylus, who was one of the great Athenian tragedians, was killed by a tortoise that was dropped on him by an eagle who mistook his bald head for a rock that he was trying to smash the tortoise on so that he could eat the turtle. Pliny adds that Aeschylus had actually been staying outdoors all day on purpose due to a prophecy that he was going to die by the fall of a house. That's pretty ironical. Or moving on to a more serious death. As deacon in Rome, St. Lawrence was responsible for the material goods of the church and the distribution of alms to the poor. According to Ambrose of Milan, the prefect of Rome asked Lawrence to deliver the material property of the church to the prefect, whereupon Lawrence brought forward the poor and the orphans and the widows and said, "Behold the treasures of the church. Behold in these poor persons the treasures which I promised to show you, to which I will add pearls and precious stones. Those widows and consecrated virgins, which are the church's real crown." Apparently the prefect didn't think this was funny and was in fact so angry that he had a great gridiron prepared, and then he put a bunch of hot coals underneath this and threw Lawrence onto this grid, this barbecue grill essentially. After the martyr had suffered much pain and agony, as the story goes, he, with a bit of laughter, looked over and said, "Turn me over, for I am done on this side." From this, St. Lawrence derives his patronage of cooks and even more obviously comedians. Despite not practicing any kind of Catholicism or Christianity here at In the Flesh, we actually have two more favorite patron saints. Saint Sebastian, who's the patron saint of exercise, and more importantly, Saint Anthony, who is the patron saint of both butchers and bacon. So you might be asking yourself, well, Danny, what is the point about all this talk about death? And I thought you did nutritional philosophy here. What's going on? Well, the point of philosophy is to die well, or to be ready to die well. To actually go out like a friggin' boss, like St. Lawrence did on that great hot gridiron. Or like Nero did, whose famous last words were allegedly, "Oh, what an artist dies in me." Or like Socrates, who drank the hemlock like a boss. If you're gonna spit all over everything that modern society or the society that you live in holds dear, you have to be prepared and ready to go out this way. Danny, then, what about nutrition? What's the point of nutrition? Well, the point of nutrition, as opposed to philosophy, is not to die well, but to live well. In fact, the point of nutrition is even more specific than that. The specific and singular point of nutrition, in combination with resistance training, that's why I say eat meat and move weight here, not just eat meat, but the singular and specific point of nutrition is actually to compress morbidity. Compression of morbidity is a term that means pushing off sickness and disease as far as possible toward the end of your life and compressing that period to a minimal time period or a minimal time frame. It's basically just reducing the amount of time that a person spends sick or disabled in their life. That's it. That's the entire game. To push disease off as far as you can and as close as you can towards the end of your life so that you are diseased for as little time as possible. This is because it's pretty hard to die well if you're diseased and sickly. It's pretty hard to go out like a boss, no matter how much preparatory philosophy you've been doing, when you're having your fucking extremities hacked off in between your thrice weekly 3 to 4 hour sessions of dialysis. So, unless you're intentionally planning on going out young and with a bang like Nero, or in a certain way like Socrates, it is the greatest of follies to sacrifice your health for any other kind of happiness. This means that the practicing of good nutrition just is good philosophy in the love of wisdom sense. The point of nutritional philosophy should be apparent to you now. The point of nutritional philosophy is to live well so that you can die well. Living well in the flesh is dying well in the flesh. That means that philosophy, nutrition, and life and death are all inseparably connected in this process of continual becoming. Now, this process doesn't stop when you hit your target weight, or when you achieve certain numbers on your lipid panel, or when you achieve a certain number of followers, or when you have a certain number of followers on your Instagram account. This process only stops when you stop becoming, that is, when you die. But Danny, you already listed off all of these terrible, strange things about death and these terrible, strange ways to go out, or funny ways to go out, and you've already stated that we can't avoid it. And that's true, you can't. And now, this might also seem like an odd thing for somebody who's sort of obsessed with health and nutrition and exercise to say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. In the modern world with modern medicine, medical technology, dialysis, antibiotics, and all the other ways we have it which to extend human lifespan, past a certain threshold of diet, right, a certain amount of rexia or rectitude with your diet, it really doesn't matter what you eat so far as lifespan is concerned. Note well that I said lifespan and not health span, right? So we're talking about how long you live. There is nothing that we can really do as individuals to kind of extend our lifespan past the average. Some people might find that controversial, but that's okay. Stick around and see if I can't make my point clear. Now, we should avoid extreme obesity because it does seem to be clear that, especially young men, because it does seem to be clear that that can actually knock quite a significant number of years off your life, at least according to how I define significant. But generally, you're born, you're an angsty teenager, you go off to college, you get a degree, you start a or get a job, you start a family, you kick your kids out on their way to college, you retire, you get sick, and then you die, preferably in that order. Absent some pretty serious technological breakthroughs that I don't think we're like on the edge of, there doesn't seem to be much that we can do to live past the average age of death, which in most first world countries, for most people is in between about 70 and 80 years old. As Psalm 90:10 says, "The days of our years are 80 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength in labor sorrow, for it is soon cut off and we fly away." Even on the SAD, the standard American diet, or the stupid American diet, or a diet that's just a little better than that, you're still probably gonna make it to 70 years old. At least as long as you don't have a significant history of smoking and you aren't like severely like clinically obese. However, even if you manage to make it, to the practical lifespan limit, which seems to be about 117 years old, you're still gonna die. Even if you made it all the way to the theoretical lifespan limit, which believe it or not is only about 125 years old, you're still gonna die. And a friendly reminder at this point, 0.0173% of Americans make it to 100 years old anyway, which is really only about 2, or it's less than 2 out of 100 to begin with. And those are like unevenly distributed. So after you hit about 80, it really starts to run in families. And after you hit 90, really it does. And then after you hit 100, like that's just pretty much all genetics, man. So where are we at? So the point of good nutrition then isn't necessarily to meaningfully delay death, but rather to prolong healthy life. The primary way that it does this is not by you getting the super special ingredients or fancy things that it's inside of broccoli or, acai berries, red wine or dark chocolate or vegetables or red meat. It's by preventing obesity and maintaining your mobility. Good nutrition prevents obesity, which compresses morbidity into a fewer number of years towards the end of your life. But you're still gonna die.
First you have to know, not fear, know that someday you're gonna die.
Or, if you prefer this message delivered in a less aggressively masculine way, and I don't know why you would, but you can try this on for size instead.
Play a melancholy song.
When you know you're gonna die, it isn't easy.
Play a different melancholy song.
Now, the reason that I say that the point of proper nutrition is compression of morbidity and not extension of lifespan is that despite everything that humanity has achieved in the lifespan lengthening department, despite all of the medical technology, despite all the breath and words and ink we've spilled and wasted on talking about diet and exercise and nutrition, age, chronological age, is still the single greatest predictor of mortality. Decades ago, researchers discovered these things, telomeres, which are like these caps on the ends of your chromosomes that allegedly act like molecular clocks. Every time cells divide, telomeres allegedly shorten until they become critically short and signal to the cell to stop dividing, which is, I guess, sort of a senescence timer, if you will. Basically, people were thinking that these things would be like a better biomarker or predictor of mortality than chronological age. However, I'm sure there's also a great commercial interest in reversing this process, and I'm not a Luddite. Like, I would love for us to be able to live longer. I'm just saying I don't think it's possible right now. However, in this study, after evaluating the data, the research team found that using telomere length to predict a human's death was basically no better or virtually no better than a coin toss. Chronological age and mobility, according to this study, was still by far the single best predictor of death in all 3 countries in the study. Of course, people are still and constantly trying to come up with a fancier biomarker or combination of biomarkers. The American Federation for Aging Research, or AFAR, formulated criteria for aging biomarkers as follows. Firstly, it must predict the rate of aging. In other words, it must tell exactly where a person is in their total lifespan. It must be a better predictor of total lifespan than chronological age. Secondly, and this is important, it must monitor a basic process that underlies the aging process, not the effects of disease, and we'll see why later. Thirdly, it must be able to be tested repeatedly without harming the person. For example, a blood test or an imaging technique, like they don't want to just have to like chop off somebody's hand and be like, let's see how he responds to this. Oh, that's a great predictor. And lastly, fourthly, it must be something that works in humans in a laboratory, or it must be something that works in humans and in lab animals, such as mice or rats. This is so that it can be tested in lab animals before being validated in human beings. However, to date, no such marker or combination of markers has emerged. Moreover, the existence of such markers has in fact been questioned, and here's why. Because the effects of many chronic diseases are inseparable from the effects of aging itself. The rate of biological aging can also vary between tissues, hence it may not be feasible to assume an overall rate of aging. There is talk about phenotypical age or physiological age, but being slightly better predictors than chronological age for certain people at certain time periods in their life. But in my opinion, go ahead and read the literature. I think it's fucking bullshit. And it doesn't really detract from the point that I'm making here, honestly, as you'll see later. So I need you to really think about this, though, because this is important. Firstly, even if we figure out a better way to predict your death or your biological age than your chronological age, and accurately deliver that information to you, you're still gonna die. You're just gonna have a better idea when. Secondly, if we figure out the perfect combination of diet, exercise, and medicine so that we're able to perfectly align your biological age with your chronological age, and of course, that would probably be like some individual variability there, but we figure it out, right? Your chronological age will then again be the best predictor of when you're gonna die, because it's gonna be the same as your biological age. And thirdly, or lastly, I suspect that whatever marker or combination of markers that we uncover that we use to predict this quote-unquote biological age will very much align with the 2 most important ones that we already know how to accurately measure now, which are chronological age and mobility. There's no way around this, and we're gonna see why. But you're born, you're an angsty teenager, you go to college or you go to an apprenticeship, you get a job, you start a family, you send your kids off to college, you retire, you get sick, and then you die. Preferably in that order. There's no avoiding this. But when I talk about compression of morbidity, we're not talking about how long you're gonna live. We're talking about how slow you're gonna die.
We're not talking about how long you're gonna live, hon. We're talking about how slow you're gonna die.
And that's what compression of morbidity is all about. Dying quickly and in a dignified fashion like a boss at the end of your life. Find out in part 2 that it's either click the title card when it comes up at the end of this video, or just let it autoplay. I'm probably gonna put these in a playlist and it'll just keep rolling right into the next part.